Welcome to the Tarin It Up podcast. I'm your host, Tarin. We'll be tearing it up, tearing it down, and tearing it apart, dissecting all things related to those who deviate from the standard. From leaders of their industry to leaders of mediocrity, and maybe a gear review or two thrown in. We shoot the shit and let the conversations flow, so if that's not your style, this may not be for you. Otherwise, listen in. Hope to light a fire in you somehow. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of Tearing It Up. Today, we have Carina Hamel of Bivo, or Drink Bivo. I'm not sure the correct way. Bivo. Okay, sorry. Should have cleared that with you in the first place. Anyhow, these are awesome water bottles. Like if you imagine your plastic water bottle in your bike cage, these are stainless steel versions of that. I have seen Bivo around on the internet, and then I connected with Carina over LinkedIn, and I'm super excited to have her on because though it is we're kind of turning that corner towards the end of February right now, and it feels like winter just hit here in Tahoe. We're finally getting some snow more consistently, but we had the Sturdy Dirty registration last week or 10 days ago. We've got some other mountain bike stuff scheduled that I was just all things bike mode, but this bottle is not just for biking, so we will get into that. But Carina, will you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us where are you physically at in the world right now?
Yeah, thanks for introducing me, Tarin. I am Carina, and I'm a co-founder of Bivo. I'm based in Richmond, Vermont, which is a mountain town just outside of Burlington. We have lots of access to good mountain bike trails, running trails, lots of good skiing. I was a cross-country ski racer through 1 year after college, and so I have a big endurance background, and I love the access to the outdoors that we have here.
That's awesome. So that's what I found interesting. We were able to get on a call and kind of chat with each other last week prior to coming on and learn a little bit more about each other. And I had seen also, actually what I'd listened to a podcast you were on with the outdoor entrepreneur. And that's when I learned that you had the ski background, the cross country ski background. And I just was so interested then to hear about how you came into creating this product, and just a little bit about your ski background as well. So how did you get into, we're going to kind of start from the bottom. Like, how did you get into the outdoors in the first place? Like, what was your introduction to the outdoors in general and your, and skiing?
I have an older sister, Mariah. She's 4 years older than me. And when she was starting to ski, my parents always liked to take her out cross country skiing. We grew up in Western Massachusetts. And so they were wanting to take her out skiing, and they noticed that she would obviously have a lot more fun with other kids her age. And there wasn't a lot of local youth program opportunities in the region. And so my parents actually started the local Bill Koch program, which is a Nordic ski program that is across New England, but there wasn't one in Western Mass. So they started that for her really to just find friends for her to ski with. So when I was born, I was kind of just born into Nordic skiing. I was like taken around to different events across New England throughout the winter, and every Wednesday night, the older kids had training sessions, and I would just kind of tag along. And then on Saturdays, we had up to, I think at one point it was 350 kids in the program. So it was
Wow.
massive, and we had tons of fun and just played lots of games. And so, yeah, I was really just born into it, and I loved it from the time I was little. I loved racing right from the time I started doing lollipop races, which is when you're 4 and 5, you finish the race and you get a lollipop. And I always like took it super serious right from the beginning. I just loved it. And so I grew up cross-country ski racing. I lived in Norway for a year in high school because I was attracted to the Nordic skiing opportunities there. And then went to Burke Mountain Academy, which is a ski academy in East Burke, Vermont, and then raced for the University of Vermont through 2007.
Wow. Cross-country skiing is definitely newer in my life as far as doing it. And I mostly am off track. I have some like wide metal edge skis that I just take out around our property.
Nice.
And I don't know too much about really like the competitive side of cross-country skiing. The store that I work at, we had a guy who he was trying to he maybe still is. He's trying to get into the Olympics for the biathlon. So learn like a
Nice.
little bit here and there through him being around. But is the kind of racing that you would do then, is it always like skate or is there like stride competitions?
Yeah, there's both. So
Okay.
in biathlon, there's only skate,
Hmm.
but in Nordic skiing, you do both skate and classic. And I always actually love the classic portion of it. That was kind of my strength. And then there's also sprinting, which actually wasn't as popular when I was racing. It was just becoming more and more common. Now it's very popular, both sprinting and distance skiing. So now, actually, it's pretty cool because they just switched over the men and women to race equal distances. So the
Oh,
longest race is 50 kilometers, and the shortest race is, I think, 1.6K.
wow. That's for me, just in my skills trying to skate or stride at any kind of speed. I'm like, that is like, I mean, 4 miles takes me a while. So like 50 kilometers, I'm like, wow,
Yeah,
that's so awesome.
it's a
So
good
are
thing.
you still involved heavily in the cross country scene where you're at now?
Yeah, I actually, so when we my husband and I met, we own Bivo together.
Mhm.
When we met, we lived in Portland, Oregon, and we actually came up for the with the idea for Bivo when we were living there. And then he grew up alpine skiing, he grew up in Montana, and we both really wanted to be closer to snow. So we moved back to Vermont during COVID, and the whole point of that was honestly to just have better access to skiing because it was something we really missed. There's actually really good skiing in Portland, but we have two little kids, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and driving is just it takes too long.
Hmm.
So even though there's good access, it's an hour and a half drive up to Mount Hood to ski. It just takes too much time, and we wanted to be. I think our rule was actually like when we were picking which town to live in, we wanted to be within half an hour of skiing. And we ended up 12 minutes. So that was a pretty big win for us. And yeah, I'm definitely heavily involved in the Nordic community. And now my daughter, who's 5, she is in the Bill Koch program, just like I was as a kid. So it's cool to see that come full circle. And every time we go to events, we run into friends. So it's kind of like a reunion of different generations that come together to do this Bill Koch program. It's super cool.
That's really cool. I really love what you said about Portland, like mentioning like yeah, there's great skiing around it. But so I'm from the Northwest as well. I'm from Tacoma, Washington,
Mhm.
and I mean the Northwest is great. It's beautiful. There's so much outdoor recreation there as well.
Yeah,
Um, and I mean the same. I guess it can be said everywhere. Like I'm in Tahoe now, but I do live in the heart of it. Like I'm anything out my door. I can hike, bike, snowmobile, snowboard, all this, or at like multiple resorts, 15 to 30 minutes away. And so I just happened to move somewhere like a lot closer because obviously in the Northwest you can live a little bit closer to the resorts.
yep.
Um, but it's just, I don't know, it's different to me right here. And I love the Northwest so much. My whole family is still there. And like I said, the outdoor recreation's great. But when I'm thinking about like, okay, I'm trying to plan a mountain bike ride with my friends, but I'm there visiting, right? So I'm usually hopefully off work at least some days, but none
Yeah,
of my friends are. So trying to think about getting out for a quick ride, it's like, oh, it's not quick. I can't go meet you for a quick hour ride because it's on the way to work or whatever. It's like takes so much time to plan. And I can imagine with kids, that's a 3 hour round trip. So just
exactly.
entertaining them 3 hours in the car, trying to get them out and actually ski and stuff too. I can understand how that can be difficult. I'm curious though, what did bring you to Portland in the first place?
After college, I raced 1 year, and then I knew it was done. I was just ready to retire and start something new. But that was a huge, I feel like that retiring from your professional sports career and trying to figure out what's next is a really big challenge. As I said, I was basically born into skiing and I loved it so much. And then I was trying to think, well, what could I possibly want to do for 40 plus hours a week that's not sport. And that was hard for me. So luckily though, I got introduced to the owner of Keen Footwear. And I had worked in an outdoor store in high school and college, and I was definitely interested in product, just like how things are made. And so I met Rory, the owner of Keen, and he suggested that if I wanted to learn how to make product, I should move to China. And so he actually offered me a job in China. So I moved over
Wow.
to China. Yeah. And I worked, actually, my first job was submitting claims to factories. So if there was like a defective product, I would, submit a claim and get payment or a chargeback, so that we could, get credit for future production, that type of thing. But what was really cool about it was that I got to go from factory to factory and work with the team on the ground in China to help Keen develop shoes and manufacture them. And so I got a really cool introduction towards the manufacturing side of the business, and I could understand, when there was a request from one of the developers in Portland to the factory in China, and it would like impact the way that it was manufactured, I could see the manufacturer side of like their perspective. And so it was a really interesting way to learn about product development. And so after about 3 months in China, I was moved to Portland, and I was in the innovation group for Keen, the parent company of Keen, Rofu Design, where I was in charge of coming up with new manufacturing techniques and setting up new relationships across the globe, really, for different types of production.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
And that is
yeah,
like quite the way to learn. We've talked about this before on the podcast, and I am just that kind of person. So I dip my hands in a lot of pots because I feel like that is
uh,
just how I learn best is being on like a certain side, like not just doing it, but being on all sides of
yep,
whatever it is how I can see everything. So that's a great way to just like, dive in and be like, I know how it works on this side because so I'm a personal trainer as well. And in 2020, I got some glute bands made
uh-huh,
and they're like fabric ones. And so that was my first time ever trying to like source a product. Like, how do I do this?
yeah,
I see people do this. How do I find one? How do I get like my logo on? And so I find
mhm.
this website, order them, and the it was missing two when I got them finally. There was two letters missing on the
Oh
label.
no,
And yeah. And I was just like, no, like I did not pay, $500 for like this. And it was a whole
yeah,
process of trying to get it like fixed and refunded and finding a new company to make. I just had to make the labels and I have a seamstress friend who took all the labels off and re-put new ones on. But I was like, oh my gosh, like what a way to learn. And that's how a lot of people do learn is they're just like, I don't know, I just have to start taking shots in the dark. So it's so
yeah,
cool that you were able to have a little more experience on that other side for when it came to creating Bivo. You're like, I know how to talk to these people. I know how to get into it a little bit more. That's awesome. And
yeah.
so when you said you and your husband came up with the idea together for Bivo?
Yeah, so after about 5 years at Keen, I noticed actually exactly what you were just saying. Small brands have a hard time finding factories, sourcing products. They don't know how to make them, but there were tons of good ideas out there. It was right around the time when Kickstarter was becoming really popular, and it was before you actually needed to have a physical prototype to sell on Kickstarter.
Mhm.
And so I was seeing that there were a lot of really cool ideas, but then they would never come to fruition because people were having a hard time making them. And so I left Keen and I started my own footwear agency where I helped brands anywhere from creative direction through to production. And the whole point of that was, if you make a mistake on sourcing, it can break your brand. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that I would help people really foster good relationships with their factories. And so that was the foundation of the business. And then it kind of grew from there. So I ran that for about 10 years. And I had met my husband right when I was starting that business. And so after 2 years of running that by myself, he joined on and we ran that together and moved it from, yeah, creative direction through to production. So he worked at Icebreaker Merino and had a background in sales operations as well as trying to figure out what sells, why it sells, and kind of help brands predict what the end consumer wants. And
Oh,
so he
is
helped
that
me
kind of
build
like
out that.
a trend predicting?
Yeah, trend predicting, and also just like market research and trying to come up with where's there a hole in the market.
Okay.
And so we help brands with that. And then yeah, I guess that was 8 years later, we had our first daughter. And I actually had a hard time coming back to work. I really I needed like a new challenge, I think,
Mhm.
to work on if I was going to leave her. And so we set aside like 20% of our time. We were just like, okay, we want to start our own brand. We loved our agency, but we knew we wanted something a bit more scalable that didn't require me and Robbie as consultants. And so we set aside that 20% and just said, okay, just focus on something else. Like what we don't know what that's going to be. I was a huge fan of Powell's books in Portland, and I would just go and read business books and it would spark ideas. And
I
so
love that.
I love that process. It's super fun. But then we were out skiing and we were up on Mount Hood and talking about not wanting to feed our daughter out of plastic. She was really rejecting bottles for daycare. So
Oh.
a big challenge and we didn't want to feed her. We had to test plastic bottles and we really didn't want to. And so we were talking about that and we stopped and we're taking a drink out of my old Nordic ski drink belt, which is this like plastic vessel inside a fanny pack essentially. And
Mhm.
it's designed so you really can't take it apart and clean the plastic piece of it. So it was like 15 years old, had black mold around the rim.
Oh
And we're
God.
like, every time we exercise, we're drinking out of plastic.
Mm.
Why is that? And so right away, it was like this light bulb moment of holy shit, like there's not a plastic or there's not a metal bike bottle. And
Mhm.
so we went home, started researching it. And within 2 weeks, we were designing the first product, which is the Bivo one.
Wow. That's awesome. And it's so I know now I see a lot of like stainless steel things for kids, little dishes and cups and stuff like that, but it does seem that that took a long time to come to market after, Hydro Flask and those kind of things started appearing and becoming really popular. So
Yeah.
that's just it's such an interesting story too about, you know, coming to terms with that like through your daughter
Yep.
and realizing this because now as you say that I'm thinking about it like yeah I have my hydro flask that I take to the gym with me everywhere but it took a while because of I just would get so annoyed with taking the lid off and all
Yeah.
the straw lids like weren't leak proof and it's like how did
Yep.
we take so long to finally get some like leak proof straw lids so it's easy to like drink in the middle of a yoga class or in the middle of a workout without spilling stuff everywhere taking the lid off but as far as like sports outdoors and endurance sports or something you're thinking about your like reservoirs your bladders like the all plastic and bike bottles plastic and a lot of that obviously has to do with weight I'm sure and that was kind of the thing I that wasn't the main thing I thought about when I first saw Bivo, but it was the like the feeling of just getting used to not squeezing that bottle. So I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll get to that too and all the design that came into it. So the Bivo one, what did it tell us about it? What did it entail? Just as
Yeah, you kind
us.
of hit the nail on the head with the two problems we felt
Mhm.
like we had to solve. So we were very concerned about weight. Portland is a huge cycling city. There's a lot of road bikers, and so we were concerned. A lot of our friends. I mean, we also ride bikes, but we also wanted to lean on our friends because we were biased with the idea, of course. So we talked with a lot. We set up a lot of focus groups and customer surveys, and weight was definitely a big thing that was in our heads of something we had to solve. The other was you can't squeeze metal, so how do you get the water out quickly? So those two problems were like top of mind. The other one that came out that we didn't actually predict was cleanability. And
Oh.
that was the thing. We found that a lot of cyclists throw away their plastic bottles because they're too hard to clean. And so we wanted to make sure that we focused on those three in the end. Those were the three that came out. So the Bivo one is a single wall 21-ounce bottle. We used a thinner gauge of metal and we went with single wall, which means that it's not insulated. And we did that simply because of the weight. We wanted to have cyclists adopt it. And we felt like if it was too heavy, that was going to be a big barrier of entry. So that's why we came out with the single wall first. We ended up launching an insulated bottle about a year and a half later, and now that's our top seller. But I think it was a good way to enter the market because it proved that we understood performance.
Hmm.
We understood the importance of weight on a bike. The other piece was the flow rate. So we wanted it to be a super simple design, and we wanted the water to come out quickly. So you mentioned like not wanting to unscrew a lid while you're in the middle of a yoga class. Of course, that's the same for the bike. And so we wanted it to be a pretty similar design to what people were used to already. So we have simple sport nozzle that has a straw on it that actually vents air into the bottle and helps equalize the pressure and pushes the water out. So we hired a former NASA engineer to help us design the flow rate.
Wow.
And so he helped, yeah, so he helped with a lot of like fluid dynamics and doing a bunch of testing. We did a whole bunch of 3D testing, they're 3D printing, and it ended up taking us 18 months to develop the bottle. But the flow system now is patented and it pours out faster than you can squeeze plastic. So we wanted to beat it, or we wanted to match it essentially, and then we ended up beating it. And what came out of it is this super nice drinking mechanism that gives you no air. So like if you can think it, a lot of people say a couple things. One, they drink more water when they're drinking out of a Bivo. And two is that it's almost like drinking out of a cup because it's just water. Like that's all you get. And it's just a super simple process. So you open and close like a normal sport nozzle, and you can drink out of it one-handed.
That's awesome. Um, this is I I'm sure, anyone can complain about anything, but one thought I have with biking and stainless steel bottle is the thought of missing your cage or something or it rattling out and then hitting, especially if you're road biking or something, hitting the cement or even mountain biking can hit a rock and
Yeah.
damage there. Have you had many people mention that to you or be any kind of problem? Because now, especially whether it's single or double walled, that can affect the integrity of the bottle. And probably only if you're really trying to keep the water cold, right? Not the workability of the flow rate, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, was that of anyone's concern of
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it can dent and it can scratch. And that's kind of like the nature of, you put the bottle in and out of a bike cage and there's dirt in there and there's rocks that hit it. So definitely it does turn into a product that looks like it's being used and it should be. And so a lot of, we actually have, so we have colored versions that are coated in silicone and we did that specifically for noise in the cage. Like I
oh
hate
yeah.
noise. And so I
Hmm.
wanted something that would dampen that. But it turns out actually no metal bottle had been designed to actually fit in a bike cage. And so we did a ton of shaping and making sure that it worked in a variety of bike cages. And so the shape alone really helps with the rattling. Because it fits so well in bike cages, it doesn't move around, which really creates that rattle. If you put a raw bottle, which is our stainless steel, like no color on the outside, in a metal bike cage, it will rattle a tad bit, but it's really not a common complaint that we get. And the same thing um with the dropping of the bottles, I think people have gotten used to the fact that if they drop their hydro flask, it does dent and it's such a
Yeah.
big bummer. Also is like, well, that might tell a story. Like you remember the big climb that you went up and it fell down at the top and you'll always remember that climb. And so we kind of like to look at it that way. And a lot of our customers do too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's like with any piece of gear, that first scratch or something, right? You're like,
Yes.
ah,
Yeah.
but then it gets much easier to take all the other hits.
Yeah.
And unlike, an Nalgene or something, when it cracks, then and you had all your stickers, your favorite stickers on it, and it cracks, and it's just
Yeah.
like a little bit of heartbreak, like, oh no, my bottle, like especially those like crazy outdoor people like us.
Yeah.
And so yeah, with these stainless steel bottles, like I said, the dent then just carries the story and it's not just like done for. But it can be a little hard to get over the first one
Yeah.
after you
Yeah,
realize
for
like,
sure.
okay, fine, it's just aesthetic and this is what happens. And at least it's not just like cracked now and I can't finish my ride. Like go pick it
Yeah.
up if it did come out of your cage or something and you're still good to go.
Yep.
Um, and so your background, kind of going backwards just a tiny bit here, it was mostly skiing. So I'm curious
Hmm.
about like you did mention you ride, um, and so how it really just became do you use this skiing? I mean, I've seen pictures
I
on
do.
phone on Instagram. So I'm
Yep.
curious of other ways, I guess, to get people to think about using it because, we have these, or I've seen the fanny packs that have bottle holders like Camelback, just for
Yep.
namesake, a fanny pack, and you can put actual bottle in it rather than a bladder. So,
Yeah.
is that I'm sure Bivo can fit in those, but
Yes.
you have to convince people of like using stainless steel out on a ski or a run or something.
I mean, I think it's just kind of like convincing them for biking too. Once you get used to it, I think that like you don't want to go back. We've done some surveys and we've found out that 95% of our customers buying Bivo are using them outside of the bike and in addition to on the bike.
Wow.
And so yeah, and one I think the actually one of the focus groups that we did, there was someone that said, well, plastic's just the necessary evil on the bike. And so I think that consumers' mindset has always been, well, that's what I just have to use because that's all there is. And so
Hmm.
now that there's this other opportunity for them to use metal in their sports, they're finding that they want to use it all the time. And so what we see people using them. Actually, a common comment is using them in a car, which is funny, like to and from a workout. They fit in a cup holder,
Yeah.
which is actually really big benefit. And they don't, it's like really easy drinking. And so
Hmm.
again, you can just focus on driving. So we get that comment a lot. People like to use them I like to use them for skiing. Our nozzle is so open that they don't freeze. And so
Oh,
you also can put warm water in our bottles. So if it's super cold outside, it's a really nice thing to have like a warm apple cider or hot tea or um, something that warms you up inside. So we are seeing that there's a lot of use cases for Bivo outside of the bike.
that's awesome. I love the again, just the simple uses. It's like the biking was kind of the gateway drug for it, right? Like you're
Yes.
introduced
Yep.
here because there wasn't anything there, and now people are realizing, like, wait, it doesn't have to stop here. Because, I mean, I take my Hydro Flask everywhere with the straw lid for easy use, but
Yep.
so that took years to get the leak proof. And in my truck, I don't have a good, like, it lays next to me because
Yep.
there are times that it does, trickle out. So then I'm like, oh no, where'd this puddle of water coming, leaking down my
Yeah.
console here? Or yeah, just uncomfortable right next to stuff between my leg and my center console. And the bottles I have that do fit in my cup holder, it's just a whole thing. It's
Yeah.
like the lid's not the same, or trying to unscrew it or whatnot. So
Yeah.
that they're actually drinking water, like leaving the gym, right? When you should be drinking it and rehydrating, that you're not
Yeah.
just like, oh, I gotta wait till I get home so I can chug some water. Now you can fill your bottle up, leaving the gym, and easily be able to drink it. You
Yeah.
also mentioned, excuse me, one of those kind of three main things was the cleanability.
Mhm.
And for me, what I'm wondering, or what my problem is rather with plastic, is I use electrolytes a lot. So me just being able to get the kind of taste or flavor out after, it can linger for a few washes. And I'm wondering if that was what people's problems were, if they're actually struggling with like the nozzles of other bottles, or if it was all of that.
Yeah, all of it really, but I think the nozzle in particular, just there's so many little nooks and crannies in a nozzle that it's kind of hard to get it clean, and so there's a lot of like mold buildup that gets left in there, especially if you are using sports mixes. And so we made ours so that the nozzle can be completely removable, and we also made it out of food grade silicone instead of a plastic because we wanted it to be dishwasher safe. So that's dishwasher safe. The straw, that's the vent for the air. That's also food grade silicone and can go in the dishwasher, and the body of the bottle can go in the dishwasher. So because of that, it is really easy to clean. What we have found is sometimes flavor does linger on the silicone straw, but if you do put it in the dishwasher, we like to use like a milder dish soap, like non-scented, fragrance-free kind of thing. And that we find cleans the straw super well and gets that flavor out.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I might have to look into that. I just had a mind blown moment of the soap and non-fragrant. I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah.
something that I should try, because that's what happens to me nowadays. But that's because where I live, we don't always have hot water right on hand. So some
Got it.
cleaning in cold water is not the best, or having that rinse. So that sometimes still lingers.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, what a great idea. And just the ease of throwing everything except for, so you can throw the nozzle, the straw, and the body in the bottle, but you're not
Yep.
taking like the top
We
piece
like to
then.
wash that by hand. Yeah, it
Okay.
actually is tested as safe in the dishwasher, but we don't like to put any plastic in the dishwasher,
Yeah.
so we always just wash that by hand.
Okay. Awesome. Well, quick and easy then for
Yeah.
anybody. And I mean, you can still have I know a lot of people who, especially more doing like endurance sports, longer efforts, have a designated bottle for their like flavors for their drink mixes, whether it's like a carbohydrate mix or just an electrolyte, because of
Mhm.
that lingering flavor. So you can still do the same thing, have a special like Bivo flavored bottle and a just plain water Bivo bottle. Um, but
We actually get people commenting too that they like to have a dress bottle because they like the drinking mechanism so much, but they want theirs for the bike and then also just to like take around with them to different events.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, and you know what? That's a good segue into something I hadn't thought about, but events. Like, what are
Mhm.
you guys up to with Bivo? Are you attending a lot of races, or what are you guys doing on that front?
Yeah, we did a huge road trip last summer. We find that events are really important for us, and they're a really good way to spread the word. We're small. We're only 3 years in the market, and we have been pretty frugal in terms of we've done a small friends and family round, but we haven't done any big VC funding, and that's very intentional. With some of the clients that we had on the footwear side, we saw some kind of just horror stories of raising money and losing control of the business and making bad decisions, especially on the product side, because like bring it to market quickly or changing who your target audience is, even though like the founders had a strong hold on what that should be, like they were
Hmm.
kind of pressured into changing the direction of their business. And so we've been quite stubborn with that, even though it's very hard. And so we have to be really good about where we spend our money and how we like what we spend our marketing dollars on. And we find that events are huge for us. So last summer, my husband and I packed up the car and with the kids, and we went on the road for 2 months and hit a bunch of events across the country. So we a couple big ones that were like kind of a surprise for us. Ragbri in Iowa is a it's basically a bike festival on a 6 day bike event where you can try to go as fast as you can, or if you want to go as slow as you can, it doesn't matter. It's 30,000 people that ride across the state. And so that was our first big one. And then we hit some in Montana and Colorado. But yeah, we find that the events are, first of all, super fun. We love to participate in them and meet folks along the way. And then we also just find it's a great way for us to spread the word about Bivo.
That's awesome. Um, I I just love events. I love attending them as a vendor or just like a person. It's
Yeah,
one of my new things of how can I kind of attend more events because you get to find all these cool brands too when you are at these bigger events. I think it was when we had our offline chat prior to meeting, we talked about Sea Otter here in California.
hmm yeah,
I've never been to that. And so if you guys are cyclists out there in the kind of, I don't know, well, it could be anywhere, but definitely in the West, you may have heard of it. But I really want to make it there this year and check it out. But 'cause all those big events, you just discover new things, and it's so awesome to see what is out there because you're like, oh, I never would have thought of that. Like, I don't know.
yeah,
I guess I never really did think about, or like as I was grabbing my plastic bottle out of my bike, I wasn't like thinking, I wish this was stainless steel. It just never even crossed my mind of it being
yeah,
an option. So
yep,
that's awesome that that's one of the ways that you find you spend your marketing dollars best because
yeah,
and I love that you are kind of remaining stubborn in where you're at of like your vision and you don't want to bring anyone else on who's going to change that for whatever else because we're all about that, just kind of trying to stay strong in your beliefs and the
yeah,
direction you want to go. But obviously that's super hard, especially when it comes to like relying on finances. You're like,
yeah,
okay, it becomes a kind of a necessary evil is
yeah,
like you need some finances to keep your business going, which you care about so much. So how can you keep it
yeah,
going? But it's awesome that you guys have found a way that's working for you and keeping the business in the direction you want it to go.
yeah.
Um,
Thanks.
and speaking of that kind of challenges in business and whatnot, today's just kind of retail landscape and the outdoor industry especially seems that it's in this like kind of a difficult spot for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
this may be relative to the times or it might just be in being a product-based business in general. But what do you find is your biggest challenge in like this product-based retail space?
Yeah, 2023 was definitely tough from a retail standpoint. It just seeing the industry. Actually, Bivo grew We doubled last year. So I think we're so early that it's okay that, it doesn't impact us as much as I think the bigger brands. A
Mhm.
lot of bigger brands over purchase, so they are holding on to a ton of inventory. They're having to reduce the price of their goods. And so it's definitely been a hard little stint in the bike world. And somehow we have been able to kind of navigate around that, which has been very good. But yeah, I think our biggest challenge right now is operational growth. Like we are growing pretty quickly, and we're trying to balance like not having a ton of funds, hiring people on, making sure we have enough staff to hit dot all the I's and cross all the T's, I guess. So yeah, operationally it's hard right now. We're just like trying to figure out how to keep up with our growth actually, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah, but that is a problem a lot of brands do have, especially when they're starting out. Because you can grow, some brands can grow like too fast, too soon, and whether that's because they don't have the staff to, they're getting orders or something that they can't produce them, and just funds allocation being here or there, I can imagine that's really hard to figure out and probably scary too when it comes to thinking about, okay, we're at a point that we could use someone here. We could hire someone to fill this role and to take these responsibilities on. And I'm sure it's got to be like, but is that just for now? Is it forever? Like,
Yeah.
bringing someone on, hiring someone, and it's like you want to be able to promise them longevity.
Yep.
So, and it's got to be a scary step to like, okay, we have to make sure we have these funds like forever, like ongoing or as
Yeah.
long as possible, right? So when do
Yep.
you make that leap to create a new position or bring someone on your team? How big is your team, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, we have what are there? There's four of us here in the Richmond, Vermont office. No, sorry, five of us. We just hired a new marketing specialist.
Look at
And
that.
yeah, and we're about to hire an events person. Actually, that job just got posted. So if anybody out there is interested in working at Bivo, that's a great one. It's actually to hit all the events I was just talking about, really from well, all year, but this big season's April to October. Our next hire is definitely going to be an operational role, and it's going to be a combination of, when can we afford it, as well
Mhm.
as when do we like absolutely need it. We really, I think I started in a small company. So Keen was big, but Rofu, the parent company, was small. And I
Mhm.
was, because of the small nature of the business, I was able to get into opportunities that really I wasn't qualified to do. And so I grew really like, my career grew because of that.
Mhm.
And so I love the ability to like promote from create jobs that are entry level, but then like see where our staff fits in as the company grows. That's kind of a fun thing. So we also just like know that people within the company now are naturally going to start taking on different tasks than they anticipated when they took the job. So that's kind of a cool thing too.
Yeah, that's amazing to be able to offer someone a job that they know that there's growth in.
Yeah.
Because that's, yeah, a lot of people get stagnant. You take a role and it's like, this is what it is, and this is what it's
Yep.
always going to be. So it's awesome to be in a position where you can see it grow, you can see your staff grow. And speaking of growing with your kids, I'm curious, being a mom, having this business, this small business, and now they're getting to the ages at like school ages. Do you find that harder to or easier to manage? Because I'm sure they're getting into more activity. So on that hand, you're finding yourself like maybe being busy with that, but then again,
Yeah.
they're at school during the day, so that's when you can set a time aside to work. How do you find managing like running a small business and having two small children?
Yeah, it's honestly like probably not the most ideal timing. Um, but our son is two. Somehow, I don't know if we just like aren't good at this or something. I honestly think it's just you get lucky, you get unlucky. We have two kids who do not like to sleep. So that has been really hard. Our daughter has worked through that. She didn't sleep well until she was like 2.5. Our son is still in the mode of like, he doesn't like to sleep. So honestly, as they start to sleep, it gets a lot easier. Just you have a lot more energy for everything. Childcare is definitely a national challenge.
Hmm.
It's very expensive. The offerings aren't like our son. I love his program, but we have to drop him off at 8 and then he gets picked up at 4:30. So like work hours are pretty limited. We obviously work a lot like in the evenings, and because Robbie and I are married and together all the time, we talk about it a lot. And so like we get plenty of work in, but I think like, we're lucky in the fact that our jobs can be flexible. Childcare is a huge challenge, and it really limits the growth, and in particular for a lot of women, I think, in their careers.
Hmm.
As the like our daughter started kindergarten this year, and I thought that was going to make things a lot easier, but honestly, it doesn't. Her school ends at 2:30.
Right.
Yes, she has a lot more like different activities. Our public school here is phenomenal, and there's some really cool aftercare programs. And so she's part of this gym class after school program that like goes skiing and hiking and goes to the gymnastics studio and goes swimming and like all sorts of they even go sailing one day a week. Like it's
Wow.
really cool. Mr. G, he deserves like a huge shout out because he's incredible. And so yeah, that stuff is like our public school system is awesome. It does cost extra, of course.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I mean, having kids is really expensive, and it is time consuming, but it's also super rewarding. And I'm having so much fun in getting our daughter out on skis and enjoying the winter. This is her first year of like really being able to do all of them super well. And so it's really fun to see.
I bet that's amazing to see, especially like it came full circle with her being in the same program that you
Yeah.
were in. So it just kind of, I don't know, keeps you young in a way. Like you're getting to relive it through her and
Yeah.
getting to see it from a different perspective. So that's really awesome.
Yeah.
Well, where can people find Bivo? Are you in retail stores?
We
Or
are.
okay,
Yeah, we're in about 200 across the country. You can also find us at drinkbivo.com, and we have a retailer locator on our site. So if you do want to
perfect.
shop local, you can try to find your local shop, or if you have a local shop that should sell Bivo, just reach out to us because we're always looking for new outlets. Then you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, the at drinkbivo hashtag.
Awesome. I will link all that in the show notes and the website and everything. And we've talked about before on the show when we've had other product-based businesses, like one of the best ways you can support them is like going into your local or favorite retail shop and asking about the brand.
Yeah.
Just simply asking, do you carry Bivo?
Mhm.
Can get it running because if you're asking for it, and the retailers themselves may have heard about it for whatever reason, may not be carrying it. But if they're having continuous customers come in and ask specifically for it, it's going to get those gears running more of why it should be in the store. So it's a really simple thing to go in and just ask. That's all you have to do is simply say, "Do you carry Bivo?" And
Yeah.
that's it. And it will get the conversation kind of going. Are there any other ways besides obviously checking you out and popping into the retail store that people can support Bivo?
Yeah, tell your friends. If you like them, just tell your friends, because that literally is our best selling tool is word of mouth. And we find often, we'll be at an event and we'll be talking to somebody who hasn't heard about Bivo, and somebody will walk by and they'll be like, "These are the best bottles, just get one." And we don't even know who they are. It's just like it's super helpful. So telling your friends is always a great way too.
Awesome. Do you have your events calendar for 2024 set? Is there any major ones that people should watch out for and look for you at?
Yeah, we are going to Sea Otter in April. We'll be at Eurobike for the first time in Europe in July. A lot of gravel events, Rasputitsa, which is one of our favorites up in Northeast Kingdom in Vermont. Steamboat Gravel out in Colorado in August. So yeah, I am going to write a blog pretty soon. That's actually a great way to learn more about us too, is our blog on our website. I
Cool.
try to tell lots of stories and give you an insight into who we are. And I'm going to be writing a blog soon, posting some of our favorite events and where you can be looking out for us.
Awesome. That is amazing. All right. Well, before we sign off, like so we know where to find you, and those will be linked in the show notes. Show notes. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience with?
No, just thanks for listening, and I hope that you check Bivo out, and I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for listening, And keep your eyes peeled for Bivo. Check them out online, on Instagram, on their website. And don't forget to pop into your favorite store and ask about them. And we will talk to you all next week. We hope you enjoyed this episode and would do us a huge favor, since we don't have any sponsors or anything like that, and would rate and review us on whatever platform it is you use, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, whatever it is. And if you're listening and downloading just through the website, tearingituppodcast.com, leave comments. We'll definitely engage back with you. And on social media right now, we're just on Instagram. Tearing It Up Podcast is the handle. Like the post, share the post, comment on the post, whatever it is you got. Show us your love so we just stay relevant and show up in the rankings at all. So again, rate and review, please. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.